At Dundee's Centre for Anatomy and Human Identification, the History Cold Case team is about to take on a dramatic new case surrounding a major unsolved archaeological mystery.
Our next case, wonderful name, it's called Windy Pits.
Okay.
You've got human remains that are spanning across 3,000 years.
Setting up a mobile forensic lab, they will investigate the puzzling remains of more than 20 people discovered here in underground caves. They're believed to be some of the oldest human bones ever found in Britain.
Location even better. The remote North Yorkshire moors.
Oh, my neck of the woods.
In winter.
Excellent.
Potholing.
Who are they? And why are their bones here?
Perhaps it would have taken 4 or 5 people to hold him down.
Are the caves simply Iron Age graveyards? Or is there a more sinister explanation for how this became the final resting place of so many people?
If these bones came up as a forensic case, I would be advising the police we need to look at this a lot more closely.
The investigation will shine a light on a long-forgotten period of our ancient history.
Oh, okay.
A time of brutal rituals and bizarre beliefs, when people lived in fear of what lay beneath the surface of the earth.
The coup de grace. There'll be a great spurt of blood.
Can modern forensics finally solve the mystery of what happened at the Windy Pits? And what dark and surprising new truths will emerge about how we lived 2,000 years ago? The skeletons at the centre of this investigation were excavated from an extraordinary network of limestone caves, carved deep into the landscape of the North York moors. There are believed to be 22 people among the remains, but information about who they were and how they died has remained tantalisingly beyond our reach. With so many questions still unanswered, local archaeologists carefully lay out the bones again in a mobile forensic unit close to where they were first excavated. They hope a brand new investigation using science as well as historical analysis will help explain what happened here.
Well, this is interesting.
Forensic anthropologist Dr. Xanthi Mallet arrives to make the first visual assessment of the bones before reporting back to team leader Professor Sue Black in Dundee.
There's a huge amount of work to do here. There's going to be 22 individuals, we believe, maybe more, maybe less. But you've got to ask what they're doing out on the middle of North Yorkshire moors. And when you've got 3,000 years worth of history involved, I can't for a moment imagine what that's going to turn into.
Archaeologist Graham Lee brings Xanthi up to speed with how this unique and unusual hoard of human remains was discovered.
I've been looking forward to you coming in, actually, because this is a real puzzle you've got going on here. What do you know about them?
Well, all of the bones here have come from things called windy pits, which are natural fissures where the rock has cracked apart and created some quite deep kind of caverns in the edge of the valleys. And when people started exploring the windy pits, they started finding these fragments of human bone.
The remains are thought to span several thousand years, from Roman times right back to around 2000 BC. The team wants to focus their inquiry on a group of 4 individuals that were found together in one of the deepest caves, known as Slip Gill.
All of these come from just one of the windy pits, Slip Gill, which is one of the deepest and steepest of the fissures. These have been radiocarbon dated to about the middle of the 1st century BC to the beginning of the 2nd century AD. They were found in a heap at the bottom of the windy pit, and it's virtually a sort of 23-25 metre drop, pretty much straight down from the entrance. So they've all ended up being kind of squashed together at the bottom, together with kind of rocks and other debris. The suggestion has been made that it could be a family.
But why might a family end up dead in a cave? At the site where they were found, Xanthi sees for herself why these mysterious caves are called the Windy Pits.
We're now above Slip Gill, which is one of the deepest windy pits. And can you see all the vegetation's moving here? Mm-hmm. And that's a result of the hot draft coming up from the mouth of the windy pit.
I can see why this would have been a really kind of mysterious place.
It looks spooky, doesn't it?
It does, yes. Oh, you can feel the warm air from here really
Straight
well,
away.
can't you? Yeah.
The human bones found in Slip Gill date from around the 1st century AD.
There was a series of expeditions into these fissures, say, through the 1950s. I'm not sure that you would actually look at them and say that everyone is necessarily clad that appropriately for caving.
Some hard hats.
Yeah.
And some ropes, that's pretty much it, and a spade.
And they were the people that recovered the bits and pieces of the bodies from the bottom.
Since being found in the 1950s, the bones have been the subject of much study and debate. But the job of this new investigation is to look at the evidence again with fresh eyes and without being influenced by any previous theories. Back in the mobile laboratory, Xanthi begins the task of making sense of the puzzling remains. She will look for signs that could confirm age, gender, and any evidence of trauma. But the incompleteness of the skeletons will prove a major hurdle in trying to establish the identities of the dead.
Not very much here with this one. No skull, no pelvis. Not very much at all. Initially, we're looking certainly an adult individual. Pretty robust femur, been reconstructed slightly, so first gut feeling would be that this is probably a male. Luckily, we've got quite a bit of the skull on this one, so this might actually work for reconstruction.
As her initial examination continues, she spots a curious injury on the jawbone of one of the males.
Now, that might be our first sign of significant trauma. It looks like a sharp force trauma to the side of the mandible, which would just be along your jawline. This is not an injury that's happened a reasonable time before death and the bone has started to regenerate. So, initial impression would be that this is an injury that could have occurred around the time of death.
So at least one of the 4 people from Slip Gill may not have died of natural causes.
So we've got some interesting elements mixed in. We've got some sharp force trauma on a fairly robust group. It's interesting.
By forensically retracing events around the scene of death and gaining clues as to who these people were in life, can they uncover what happened here? This case promises to drag the team back to a largely unrecorded period of our history. It's a rare opportunity to build a personalised account of life and death in Britain 2,000 years ago. Back at headquarters in Dundee, they must first agree on the direction the investigation will take. Xanthi brings Professor Sue Black up to speed, along with Professor Caroline Wilkinson, who is in charge of facial reconstruction.
One of the cave sites is literally just kind of like a hole in this bowl in the earth, and it's basically goes straight down. It's like a chimney. And so people have obviously been deposited in here, and we're not sure why.
To help understand the shape and size of the Slip Gill cave where the 4 skeletons were found, Xanthi shows them a 3D reconstruction.
The CGI will really help you get a kind of visual on the type of system we're talking about. Can you see that? Can you see that? So this is kind of open, desolate moorland. This is going down into the cave, so you can see the shaft.
That's good.
It's huge, isn't it? It's amazing. Yeah. So you can see how bodies would have tumbled down here. Once they get kind of down the channel and over that ridge,
this is where they would have landed.
Presumed to be the bones of a man, a woman and 2 teenagers, the obvious question is why?
You've got to wonder why, why they're putting people in here. Is this ritualistic? Is this just vindictive of people just being, murdered and in essence
You're
hidden?
concealing them.
Exactly, yeah.
To try and get some concrete answers about who these people were, bone samples taken in the field will go forward for forensic testing.
DNA is the obvious one. Obviously, are we looking for a biological relationship which ties all or any of the 4
The 4
individuals? Yeah.
Carbon dating has already been carried out on the bones, placing them around the turn of the 1st century AD.
So that really only leaves us with stable isotopes.
Indeed. Yeah, so obviously with that, we're going to be wondering, are they local? Were they always local?
But it will
between
tell
them?
us a bit about diet as well.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah. And possibly quality of life, standard, that kind of thing as well.
Okay.
So we're going to be doing the stable isotopes. So besides all of the tests that we can do, I think we really need to look at the context, the wider context. Who was potentially using this as a burial site, deposition site, or was this accidental? Why? The bigger picture. It's a real kind of intriguing puzzle, isn't it?
Yes, it's not normal.
No.
No, it isn't normal.
No, nothing normal about
And
this.
so there is a story.
Yeah.
It's about finding out what the most likely story is.
The damaged jawbone belonging to the teenage male is the only hard evidence they have so far that this might not be a straightforward or innocent burial, but it's enough to rouse Sue's suspicions.
The likely scenario is sounding as if what we've got is a suspicious situation where 4 individuals are found at the bottom of a very long shaft in the middle of remote moors, but there are other caves around it where obviously something untoward must have gone on at different times in history.
One of the first tests is DNA. This could establish if the skeletons have more than their final resting place in common.
Are they a family? So do we have mum, dad and 2 adolescent children? The only way we're going to be able to find that out is if we can extract DNA, and we can match them through DNA.
But the older the bones, the harder it is to get meaningful results. And science alone won't be enough to solve this case. The carbon dating places our skeletons in the early part of the Roman occupation. But if our people were locals, theirs would likely be a very pre-Roman way of life, much as people had existed in and around the moors for millennia. Xanthi has come to a traditional Iron Age village to meet archaeologist Steve Sherlock. She wants to understand how our people from Slipgill might have lived and why their remains would be in a cave.
So the individuals from Windy Pits, would they have been living somewhere like
They'd
this?
have been living in this sort of environment, in these sort of structures indeed.
How many people would have lived in a house like this?
One family, but would have probably been 8 or 10 people living in a house like this.
And how many houses like this would have made up a community like
There
this?
could have been 4 or 5 houses of this size in a busy village.
That's quite a large community then.
Indeed it is, and we mustn't just think of this one community. There would be another one really quite close by.
And they would have interacted with each other?
They would have traded, farmed and communicated with each other, supported and helped each other. We're talking about society here, not individual groups.
During the Iron Age, the British population topped 3 million people. This was a sophisticated culture and society. Steve explains how the part of the moors where the Windy Pits are located were a sort of no man's land between 2 competing Celtic tribes.
The Windy Pits are an interesting area because they're on the North Yorkshire moors, which are, let's say, a neutral area between a tribe to the south called the Parisi and the tribes to the north of the Brigantes. So it's probable that the Parisi were using the Windy Pits. They're the people that are having sites and activities on the southern part of the North Yorkshire moors.
Would the 2 different tribes have fought?
There may well have been territorial differences, but there's no evidence for battles as such.
Curiously, Steve is convinced that caves would not normally have been used for burials, or deposition as archaeologists call it.
The normal burial rate may well have been cremation, scattering the ashes to the wind, or people who've been buried at locations nearer to the settlements, a long way away from the windy pits.
So it's a really different type of deposition.
It's a different deposition in terms of the choosing a location and potentially only choosing certain people, of course, to be buried at those points.
So if people aren't living in the immediate vicinity, it's taken a lot of people a lot of effort to bury people there.
Indeed, that's telling us there's a religious action to this and choosing people, location for a special reason.
This points to the discovery of the skeletons at Slip Gill being something unusual and special, even for Iron Age society. How did the bodies end up several feet down in the dark, and why? Might the bones finally give up some answers? Back at Dundee HQ, the team is desperate for a new lead. They assemble to receive the results of the DNA analysis. Dr. Ian Barnes, from Royal Holloway, University of London, has the difficult task of trying to answer the question of whether the 2,000-year-old bones at Slip Gill come from people who are genetically related.
We're hanging on your every word in the hope that you're going to give us something phenomenally exciting. And over to you.
Yeah.
That face says everything. Go
Okay,
on.
so basically we've had a couple of goes at getting DNA from this material, and there's just nothing that is reliable, and it looks to us like there's multiple sequences laid over the top of each other. So we think it's just contamination.
Okay.
I don't think there's any real DNA from those individuals in the samples that you gave us.
It's disappointing news. Ian thinks that the bones may have become contaminated, making it impossible to answer whether the male, female and teenagers are related.
So it doesn't really help the story in any way, because potentially, A, they could still be family and linked genetically. We just can't tell.
Yeah.
Well, that's disappointing, but so be it. That's the way science goes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Ian.
Right, sorry about that.
No
Good
problem.
to speak to you. Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Take care. Bye.
With DNA having failed to provide any leads, Sue feels it's time she examined the bones herself. To scour them for possible causes of death, she starts by looking at the injury to the jawbone of the teenage male. Her experience alerts her to how serious a blow this could have been.
It's one of the most dangerous places for men who are shaving, just right there. Because if you put your finger just lightly on there, you'll feel an artery pulsing underneath, and the facial artery comes up just on there. Just perfectly where that is, may I say. So that what you have is a real nick into the bone. That's not a thin-bladed implement. We've got a large blade. So whether you're talking axe, you're talking machete, you're talking something that is a large blade. It's not like a little thin kitchen knife, because you have a wide entrance and a narrow point at which it's come to a stop before it's been pulled out. And so that when that implement has come up onto that jawline, what it's then done is it's caused fracturing to run across here and up there, and then up towards the base of this tooth.
Sue believes this wasn't self-inflicted. He may have been murdered.
It certainly will have caused a lot of pain and a lot of bleeding. It could have resulted in death. This has been caused by somebody else. Somebody has inflicted this on this individual. And it's a young individual.
And then, on the leg bones of the adult male, she spots more suspicious marks.
This is a pattern that's quite consistent with a fracture occurring what's called a green bone. So it behaves very differently from an old bone that doesn't have much water content and organic material still left in it. What we don't have is any evidence of healing. So this is consistent with the person perhaps dead, perhaps not quite dead, being dropped down onto a height.
There's no proof yet, but Sue feels that taking all the evidence so far, a picture of suspicious death is definitely emerging for this group.
If these bones came up as a forensic case, I would be advising the police we need to look at this a lot more closely. There's something very suspicious going on here. You might cut yourself shaving, but you sure as heck don't cut yourself shaving at that depth. So that the sharp trauma injury, if nothing else, is decidedly suspicious.
Xanthi has an agonising wait to return to Slip Gill. She's keen to test the theory that the breaks on the leg bones of the adult male could have been caused by falling into the cave. But the caves are important roosting sites for bats, and access is restricted. Finally, spring arrives, and she's able to meet up again with archaeologist Graham Lee and local caver Martin Rowe.
Lovely to meet you. Is it quite dangerous in there, do you think? Have you got any idea?
For anybody who didn't have the right equipment and knew how to use it, then potentially it is, because just behind me here is a 16-metre drop straight to the floor.
That is deep, isn't it? Straight down?
Straight down, yeah.
Even an experienced caver like Martin thinks twice about entering Slip Gill. He'll carefully descend to show Xanthi the inside of the cave via a camera attached to his helmet. For the first time, she will see the real anatomy of the final resting place of the skeletons. The first few metres of Slip Gill are on a shallow incline before Martin reaches the main shaft.
Just to let you know what I'm doing, I'm moving towards the top of the big drop. And you should be seeing a big dark hole in front of me.
Guys? Oh, look at that. That's like going into the abyss, isn't it?
Yep. Yep, you can see there's nothing under him there.
No.
The cave is 16 metres deep, certainly a potentially fatal drop. A series of overhanging rocks make the final descent particularly perilous.
That must be pretty scary in there, mustn't it? Because it's going to be pitch black, except for that little light coming off your head torch.
Yep.
Oh dear. That wasn't very clever.
So he's going to be now touching down where the bodies were found on that kind of scree slope.
Exactly.
So I'm at the bottom now. What I'll do now is I'll turn on the big light and show you how far I've come down from the surface. Okay, great, thanks.
Oh, wow.
Wow, look at that.
It's an extraordinary place, and one that's remained unchanged for thousands of years.
That is a long way.
You can see the nature of the fissure.
That's it's very slim on the way down, isn't it?
It is a very narrow slot. That's fantastic.
And this ties in with the idea that our man fell from a height.
So once a body went in there, it's basically going to slide down that chimney, bounce off some rocks on the way down, off the ledge, and land at the bottom, down on this scree slope down here.
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine anyone getting out of that alive.
Xanthi's happy that the man's injuries are consistent with the cave being the scene of death. But why were these people here? What was the significance of this place?
Oh, I think we're going to see him in a second. Hey, there he is. Hello. How you doing?
I'm a bit sweaty.
Well done, sir.
Yay.
In one piece.
Quite relieved to have you back with us.
Yeah, very much so. Well done.
Hey.
Meanwhile, in Dundee, Caroline is beginning the facial reconstruction. None of the 4 skeletons in the group has a complete skull, but Caroline is hoping there are enough pieces to rebuild the face of the adult male.
Well, we've got quite a lot of pieces, and it looks like when you hold them next to each other that they do fit. That piece clearly fits against there. And we've got large sections that have already been reassembled that need a little bit of adjustment, but again, we've got other large pieces that fit. But this isn't really a problem for us because we can scan them with the scanner, and then you can see the join lines on the scan, and we can just adjust the piece in the computer. So it makes it a whole lot easier than having to get rid of this glue and re-glue it.
But one crucial part of his skull is missing.
Now notice we've got no nasal bones, which are just at the top of the nose here, which are quite important in predicting the nose, but that seems like the only bit of the nose that's missing, so we can do some estimation from that.
Now that Caroline has examined the 2,000-year-old skull, she will use some very 21st century technology to rebuild it. Xanthi's research has indicated caves were not usually used in Iron Age burial practices. So she needs to continue on the trail of investigating why a cave like Slip Gill would have been significant. She travels to the Dales to meet Tom Lord from Lancaster University.
And we've got a rather atmospheric day to visit a cave.
Tom believes that for our ancestors, caves had special significance.
Oh, look at this. It's only very dark and imposing.
We're going underground, we're going literally into another world, an underworld.
And is that how our ancestors actually would have seen this place?
I think so.
Lights on?
Lights on.
Okay.
Helmet. And we're going into the underworld.
Okay.
Right.
Yes, please.
It gets darker, echoey.
It gets darker immediately, doesn't it?
Lose direct light.
Okay.
The cave is wet, it's dripping.
Tom has found evidence pointing to how caves were used in the Iron Age, including human bones and artifacts. He thinks the way in which precious objects like these were placed suggests that caves were spiritually very important.
And that's a perforated piece of red deer anthill.
I was going to say, because this isn't a bone that I recognise.
It's red deer anthill. If you hold it up, can you see the very careful hole that's drilled through it? You can see it's been drilled through. It's probably been on a shaft.
Is this a weapon of some sort?
It might be used as a hammer or something. And this was on a ledge about 45 feet down, so it could only have been put there, it couldn't have fallen there.
But this would have been a valuable object. Somebody's gone to a lot of time to make this into a hammer or whatever else. You're not going to leave that down a cave without good reason.
Tom believes valuable objects were placed in caves, perhaps as votive offerings or as part of rituals.
We might be seeing down some of these deep shafts, beginning about 5,000 years ago, is actual sacrifice of human and animals at certain times.
So these could be offering to the gods.
Offering to the gods of the
underworld.
This idea of an underworld crops up throughout history and across cultures. And caves were seen as portals to a mysterious place between the surface world and another. Tom's evidence also suggests a new explanation for how the Slipgill individuals may have died. He believes they may have been part of some kind of ritual sacrifice.
The archaeologists tell us that there's a distinct possibility that there's a ritualistic element to the way in which these individuals have landed up in these caves. We unquestionably have got evidence of interpersonal violence before these individuals have met their death. There is some evidence that when they've gone down the pit that there is long bone fracturing because of the drop. But there's no evidence that those have healed. If they've been alive at the bottom of the pit, it's not for very long. But, you know, that's really just looking at the evidence from the bones. I think it's most likely that they were killed before they went down the pit.
To test this new theory that the people of Slipgill were consciously sacrificed, the bones are sent to the nearby Nine Wells Hospital for CT scanning. This should reveal new information not visible to the naked eye. The evidence already points to the adult male having fractured his leg. But Sue and her colleague Dr. Roos Eismer now spot some new evidence, this time on the thigh bone belonging to the adult female.
Look. On that femur, that's a beautiful butterfly-type fracture. That's the kind of fracture that is green bone. So it's bone that's gone down, that's still got all its pliability and its plasticity. and it's fractured. It produces just such a different pattern. So like the other femur, I think that's a perimortem, around about the time of death type fracture. Isn't that interesting?
They found exactly the same type of break in the male and female adult thigh bones caused around the time of death.
Where they've come down into the pit, you've effectively got...
Sue doesn't think it's just a coincidence.
Signing them back with any sort
She thinks it could point to a deliberate attempt to immobilize the two adults.
You know, we've got two femora now that have got perimortem trauma. Why just in one bone? Why is it just the leg that's broken?
In more or less the same place.
In more or less the same place, yeah. It just makes you wonder if that's part of the incapacitation of the individual. I don't know. You don't tend to run very fast if you've got a broken leg.
This new evidence begs the question, what method could have been used to do this? Were there weapons available back then which could fit this pattern of trauma? And then there is also the injury on the jaw of the teenage boy. Could this tie in with those seen on the adults?
It can be the same implement that causes both sharp force and blunt force trauma. Just depends which bit you hit it with. So the back of an axe causes blunt force trauma, but the front of an axe causes sharp force trauma. And we have what we think is some evidence of sharp force trauma up on the mandible. So it could be the same implement that can cause it, but just used in a different way.
The breaks to the femurs on both the adults support the idea that the skeletons died at the same time, and possibly by the same method. It's a breakthrough for the team. This and the potentially fatal blow to the head on the teenage boy now leads to new questions. If we are now looking at human sacrifice, how and why did they die? Xanthi takes these latest findings to Professor Miranda Aldous-Green from Cardiff University, an expert in Iron Age rituals. She agrees that the skeletons show signs of having been ritually sacrificed.
Given the fact that you seem to have repeated injuries, and given where they've been put, you know, in a cave system, that rings warning bells for me in terms of possible sacrificial activity. And the fact that it's going on over a long time suggests that, you know, this place is special, and particular people who've met deaths in a ritualistic way may have been placed there quite deliberately.
Miranda believes that some uniquely preserved bodies, found not in caves but in marshland, could offer an explanation for exactly how and why the slipgill individuals met their death.
We have a particular group of individuals that are called bog bodies, which are found in swamps or marshes all over northwest Europe. And a lot of them, interestingly, are quite young and show signs of traumatic injury, sometimes over time, but then would lead to their death.
What types of injuries are you seeing?
Well, persistently hanging, garrotting, you know, various forms of suffocation. You do get bloodletting. There are some people who've been disemboweled, throats cut and so on, but there is this very strong evidence from the European Iron Age and into the Roman period of people who, ever so often, were chosen for some reason to be sacrificed in a particularly spectacular way and thrust deep into a marsh.
So you're looking at marsh bodies, but the individuals I'm looking at are from a cave. Would that be considered ritualistic?
Well, I think so. I think the whole thing with bogs and caves is that they're so-called liminal places. Yeah. They're edgy places. They're on the boundaries between the material world and the world of the dead, the underworld.
Bog bodies discovered the world over provide historians with ample evidence about human sacrifice. Much of the soft tissue remains, revealing crucial forensic details.
They do, yes, indeed.
One of the most famous is Lindau Man, who is thought to date from the same period as the Windy Pit skeletons.
Very lovely. Oh, now that's Lindau Man, isn't it?
That's Lindau Man, yes, indeed, from Cheshire.
Yeah.
Found in August 1984 when peat cutting was going on. And he was found in the peat. And he had been bludgeoned hard on the head twice.
Right.
And then he had been garroted and his throat cut. And he had various other traumas as well. He'd been kneed in the back as though somebody had forced him to kneel down. So he had all sorts of other injuries.
He's beautifully preserved, isn't
Yes,
he?
he is. And he was probably of quite high status. We can tell that because his moustache was very carefully trimmed using shears, which are an expensive piece of kit, and his fingernails showed that he'd never done any manual work.
Ah, I see.
And he was about 20, 25 years old, so he would have been in prime condition. Who knows who he was? He could have been a hostage, he could have been some kind of criminal, but more likely he was chosen to be a sacrifice, I suspect, at a time of great crisis.
Having studied the evidence in detail, Miranda has come up with a scenario of what happened during an Iron Age human sacrifice, and it all centres on the idea of overkill.
If you're going to sacrifice me, what are you going to do?
Well, I might drug you. I might give you some herbs or some psychotropic substance, perhaps to make you a little bit more acquiescent, because you might struggle otherwise.
Compliant.
And then I will then turn you round away from me.
Right.
Give you 2 hard blows on the skull, and that will crack the skull, by which time you are stunned, perhaps barely conscious, hovering on the edge of consciousness and beginning to sort of weave around. And don't forget, this is theatre.
Yeah.
We have lots of people watching.
We're putting on a show.
So it's really important. So the next thing I'm going to do is to garrote you.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to twist that. Okay. I'm going to leave that in place, so you are now on the verge of death, but not quite dead. Okay, hold that thought. And then the coup de grace. I will slit your throat, and because of the garrote, there'll be a great spurt of blood and a great cheer from all the community, and the sacrifice will be complete.
Yeah, now I'm dead, for sure.
Indeed.
Why so many ways of doing it, though? I mean, you've drugged me, you've strangled me, now you're slitting my throat.
It's partly because the overkill violence is necessary for the sacrifice to be really effective. Look at the investment of time and trouble and effort there has been in sacrificing you. But also, I've got to represent the entire community who are sacrificing you, perhaps to cleanse the community of all their sins and wickednesses and ills and pollution.
So if you don't have a marshy environment, you've only got the caves. What would happen then?
The death would happen, the killing would happen outside the caves, and you would then be deposited. And there must be rituals and prayers and fires, and perhaps feasting as well.
Really?
All to do with sending your soul to that place where it can't do any more harm and where the community is cleansed.
And Miranda also believes that other rituals linked to sacrifice, such as removing the soft tissue from a corpse, can leave marks on the bones too. But the condition of the bones from Slipgill remain a challenge in the battle to resurrect a compelling scenario for how these people died. Caroline's colleague, Dr. Chris Ryan, has the task of reassembling the head of the adult male before he can start work on his face.
Here we've got all the fragments reassembled into approximately the shape of a skull. And as you can see, there's quite a large chunk of the right-hand side of the cranium missing, and some of the facial skeleton. But we can, because we have the left-hand side quite intact, we can estimate much of this by mirroring parts of the skull from one side to the other. The green is just estimation of all the missing parts. There's not enough of the mandible just to mirror it, because we only have this chin area and 3 teeth.
The next stage will be to add layers of muscle and skin. Soon the face of the man who died at Slipgill will emerge. So, if our people at Slipgill were sacrificed, were they members of the local community or were they outsiders? The team hopes the stable isotope analysis of the bones could shed some light on this. If chemical signatures from the teeth and bones are consistent with those found around the Yorkshire moors, then it will indicate the skeletons were born and then lived in the local area. This could support Miranda's idea of community sacrifice. Sue assembles the team for the results.
What they basically showed was very good quality sample, typical grain-based diet, almost no marine. Okay. So that's quite interesting. What it also showed was that they were local to the area. Now, the particular band that they fall closest to is actually very localised to where they were found.
It makes it more likely to be ritual than just vindictive.
Yeah, I suppose it does.
Our Slipgill people were locals, and there was possible violence around the time of their death. But if they were human sacrifices, did they offer themselves up willingly, or were they executed? Despite the evidence that's now building, Sue is reluctant to conclude a theory of foul play until she has more proof.
We're not ruling out the fact that, you know, it isn't necessarily ritual. We're not ruling out all these possibilities, because your imagination could run wild. We're going to try and keep it as focused as we can. That says archaeologists say, got to bear ritual in mind, but what do the physicality of the bones tell us? Is there anything on there that supports this or refutes it?
Until now, the team has focused on the 4 individuals from Slipgill. But 18 more skeletons were found in other Windy Pits caves around the same area. Sue now turns her attention to some of these other remains.
It's an adult. And a lot of fracturing, so a lot of the joints have actually, where the sutures have sprung. And you can see that fracture again dissipating out into that suture. But a lot of comminutive fracturing going on here, so that the blow is to that point there. So it's coming in round about here. So again, I think we've got evidence in at least the 3 of these of some form of blunt force trauma. This is a male, an adult male.
This damage to these other skulls from a neighbouring cave could mean that the other Windy Pits were used for rituals and sacrifices. And as Sue starts to look at the remains of a skeleton from yet another cave, she notices some even more worrying marks on one of the shin bones.
This is a bit of tibia, this is a bit of the shin bone. It's got a bit of damage at the top and at the bottom. And there's 3, or looks like 3, parallel lines. Well, those are not natural. They're not rodent activity either. Those look like they could well be knife marks, or at least a sharp blade. These are parallel cut marks. These are a repeat of the same action in the same place. I used to work in a butcher shop before I started my academic career. And I can remember having to take pieces of meat off cow bones and such things. And these are the kind of marks that you leave behind as you're paring away the muscle to take it away from the bone. That may well be. Now, it tends to make you want to go too far, because what you end up doing is you want to go down the sensationalist route. And the last thing that forensic wants to do is go down a sensationalist route. But it looks like muscle's been removed. Why do you remove muscle from a human bone? I don't know. I think we could all surmise.
If these are indeed blade marks, the investigation looks set to take an even more sinister direction.
The word that everybody wants to say is the one that we're not going to say, which is cannibalism, because there's no evidence of that. All you have is evidence of cut marks. We don't know what that meat was being used for.
But nevertheless, it's a chilling turn in the story. Xanthi wants to establish what cutting marks on bone could mean, and travels to Oxford University to meet Dr. Rick Schulting, an expert in prehistoric archaeology.
If I saw these kind of marks on an animal bone, I would think butchery. But this is a human bone, so why are we getting these marks on a human leg bone?
It's unlikely that they were eating the flesh of this person like you would with an animal, because we have very questionable evidence for cannibalism at this time in Britain. If this was in the Neolithic, we might think of trying to deflesh the bones to make them clean as a part of joining the ancestors.
But how does removing the soft tissue from the bones help people go to their ancestors more quickly?
Some people in different times, parts of the world, believe that death is a process and it's not complete until the body, the putrefaction of the body is completed, and you're left with the clean bones. And at that point, the soul, if we want to speak of it as that, ascends to the ancestors. And sometimes there's an interest in hastening that process by disarticulation and defleshing.
According to Rick, the practice of removing flesh is unlikely to be a sign of cannibalism, but was a way of allowing the dead to cross over to the next world. But there were also more sinister explanations.
We have to be open to various possibilities. Some of them might deal with negative side of things, the dark side, if you will. And there is some evidence for slightly strange and odd things going on with human remains in the Iron Age in different parts of Britain that sometimes involve taking the body apart and moving bits of it around. Usually the skull especially seems to receive special treatment.
So the cutting marks could fit in with the idea of ritual dismemberment after death. But how would the marks have been caused? To find out, Xanthi and Rick head to a local butcher's.
My femur is just about free. Let me just take off the last little bits. Now, actually, you can see I've left some marks. Actually, look, all along that edge, you can see all of my butchery marks going on there. Would I use a tool like this to get rid of the rest of this soft tissue, which I've kind of left behind?
Possibly, but the other possibility is that a stone tool might have been used, which we know people were still making and using in the Iron Age.
So kind of scraping it. That would save my knife, I guess.
Yeah. I do have something with me here that we could have a go with, if you like.
Save your lovely sharp blade.
Okay, it's not necessarily the sharpest or most appropriate, but it does have one nice edge here, and you'll get a sense of what it's like to use that.
Right. So I'm just going to hold this nice and steady, I guess, and then just scrape the soft tissue off. You need to actually get a good hold of it, don't you? There we go. That was actually pretty efficient, isn't it? I'm quite impressed, actually. It's much sharper than I expected it to be.
And that's where a lot of the muscle attachments are actually joining to the bone, just around the ends, and that's, of course, exactly where we saw them on the human bone.
Exactly, and you can actually see now, look, I've left some really quite deep grooves there. Where
Oh, those are brilliant.
Yeah.
Xanthi has produced exactly the same marks on the pig bone that she found on the human leg bone. And Rick wants to demonstrate one very specialised type of defleshing, removing the skin from a person's scalp.
All the way up, yeah.
All the way up.
But why would you do that to a human head?
Well, the head is very important in many societies, and we have a very good case for it being important in Iron Age Britain and Iron Age Europe in general.
Are there any examples from the UK where the soft tissue has been moved from the head?
There's a few cases. There's one from a Romano-British context at St Albans, where they seem to have had a defleshed head placed quite near a temple complex, actually, which maybe starts to speak again of why you're doing this. The idea of trophy heads, or possibly as a punishment. We have another case up in the far north of Scotland on the Moray Firth, where again we have a child in this case. It looks like the skull has been cleaned back, so they're interested in this, having this white, clean bone to display, presumably.
So it's really rare then?
It is. There aren't that many cases. So again, it's not a normal practice, so it's a very special person or somebody that's done something terribly wrong or being made an example of, perhaps.
Xanthi has discovered that defleshing the dead was practiced in Iron Age Britain. Sometimes it was associated with funerary ritual, but maybe it served another purpose. Human skeletal remains recovered from windy pits show that some individuals most likely met a violent end, possibly as part of a ritual sacrifice. We know that at least one person had their flesh cut from the bone, before ending up in a cave waiting to be discovered thousands of years later. Until now, all the people whose bones were found in the caves on the moors have remained anonymous. But finally, the face of one of them is taking shape. The adult male from Slip Gill.
Well, our biggest problem with this skull was that it was in multiple fragments and we didn't have very much of the mandible. So Chris has done a fantastic job at reconstructing the mandible from just a bit of chin, which is remarkable, and managing to get the whole of the cranium together in lots of pieces is also quite a difficult job. And then from that, it's the same process as it would be for any reconstruction. We're just building the muscles and putting the skin on. But so the biggest challenge really was the state of the skull. Well, let's have a look at the skin then.
And he's turning into an interesting looking individual.
Wow, that's not what I was expecting to see at all. He actually looks quite masculine, really, and I wasn't expecting him to look that masculine, because the top of his head is quite gracile, really, isn't it?
Yep.
And then he's got this big heavy jaw at the bottom and really small ears. Why really small ears?
Small ears, small nose, height-wise.
I quite like him.
Good.
We've got a pretty reasonable face out of really quite badly conditioned skull.
The completion of the facial reconstruction marks the end of the investigation. The team will now report their findings to the local community. Xanthi and Sue have come to Duncombe House, not far from the Windy Pits. They're here to return the skeletal remains to the local archaeologists and to present the case results. Although they've made great strides, Sue is concerned that they don't have enough evidence on the bones to confirm that the man of Slipgill was sacrificed.
Xanthi's gone away and done a lot of historical research with a lot of people who know a lot about this area. So we've gone back to the Slipgill skeletons. We've had a look through them again, just to be sure, just to be certain.
Sue looks at the Slipgill remains one last time.
So, do you have a minute?
And she notices something on the skull of the adult male that they missed before.
I don't know, but this is left parietal. Okay, so that's sitting there. Can you see there's one line cut mark along there?
It's quite deep.
There's another one below it.
Yep.
And there's another one below that.
Sue has found several parallel cutting lines around the top of the skull.
You've got a cut mark that is, if I turn you around a bit, you've got cut marks that are coming here, and then you've got some that are back there.
It looks like Sue has detected signs of scalping on the adult male. As Xanthi discovered, this practice of removing hair and skin from the top of the head did happen in Iron Age Britain and may have been part of ritualized killings. For Sue, it's enough to finally bring the events surrounding the death of this man into focus.
I'm not a great supporter of defleshing and sacrifice and ritual, all sorts of things, as anyone will tell you that knows me. But sometimes when you're faced with information and you go through all the possible outcomes, sometimes there's only one left.
These findings will have an even deeper significance for the local community and the experts who've been studying the remains for decades.
We've actually waited a long time to get some more information about the remains from the Windy Pits, so this is very important.
There's lots of unknown questions that hopefully we'll get some answers to today.
Sue and Xanthi explained the twists and turns in the case that led to the conclusion that this was not a natural burial.
Did they go up there knowing what was going to happen to them? Or did they go up there in some way incapacitated?
All of the caves, they're not being used as a kind of a normal deposition site for burials. So why are people going up?
Caused by that, because it does fit in there really rather nicely.
Then the moment comes for Sue to announce her last-minute discovery.
It takes an incredible amount of persuasion for me to want to talk about sacrificing people to gods and placing them down portals so they don't come back. It just makes me uncomfortable. But then this morning we had a look a little bit closer at some of the areas as we were laying out the skeletons, and we came across something that we hadn't noticed before, and it was all to do with this man. On this man, and on his head only, we have evidence of defleshing. So we have scratch marks, we have parallel scratch marks that are of a similar width in various parts across his skull. They're very, very delicate, but they are there. Now, if they're defleshing, for whatever reason they're defleshing, they're only defleshing around the head, almost in the sense of a scalping, because the defleshing isn't on the face, and it isn't on the back of the head, it's just around the area of the crown.
So
which
they
means
put a blade in it and just scrape.
The cutting marks on the skull are the final piece of evidence that at least one of the slip-gill skeletons was almost certainly ritually killed. It's a terrifying story.
We've placed him into an environment which is a really rather scary, spooky sort of place that must have had some importance in the local community. He's been taken there, he's been perhaps immobilized, he's been murdered, one can assume, whether by one people or by a community, and then he's gone through a ritual removal of his scalp. So his scalp has been scraped away.
But now, it's time for the team to reveal the face of the man whose life ended in such violence.
Because we have only one skull, there was only one face that we were able to reconstruct. So do we want to see what he looked like? Yeah, go on then.
He's got quite a rugged face, hasn't he? He certainly looks like he was a pretty robust individual, doesn't he? He's, you know.
I quite like him. Slight asymmetries in the orbits.
Quite high, defined cheekbones.
If you were walking around Helmsley today and saw someone looking like that, I mean, you wouldn't look twice, would you?
When you think what he may have gone through, and you have to ask, why was he chosen? What was so important about him? Was it because he was important in the area that's why he was selected? You know, we will never know. That is really about conjecture. But what we do know is that he suffered blunt force trauma. We know that his skull was defleshed.
Following the story through and hearing more about it today, it's been absolutely fascinating. It's really filled in a lot of the picture.
That was really amazing, absolutely fascinating. I thought the facial reconstruction was wonderful.
The actual face brought it all very much home. You know, he's a very human face, and why did they do to him what they did?
And the possibility remains that the other skeletons found with this man also met the same tragic end.
We've added a dimension to this that we never anticipated we were going to. And in fact, it's a first for me that I've never been involved in something that has involved this sort of a ritual, if you like. It does still make me uncomfortable because I really don't like the words. But at the end of the day, the bones have the evidence, and the evidence speaks for itself.
The human remains presented to the team were not a recent discovery. But it took modern forensics to bring back to life a tragic story that's 2,000 years old.